Snow fell thick as chalk dust over Manhattan, smudging the streetlights and turning sirens into muted echoes. At 9:12 p.m., the automatic doors at St. Victor Hospital hissed open, and Oliver Brooks shouldered through coat-dusted white 5-year-old Theo, hot and drowsy against his chest. A small bandage crossed the boy's forehead. The fever was the bigger worry. "Hang in, buddy," Oliver murmured, voice sanded by cold. "I've got you." The waiting room was a collage of winter-dripping boots, red noses, breath still visible. A young woman moved briskly down the hall in a moss-green coat and a gray scarf, snow melting into her dark hair. Her badge read, "Ava Callahan, Director of Programs, North Star Labs." Theo lifted his head, pupils bright with fever, and pointed straight at her. "That's my mom," he blurted the words, cutting clean through the ER noise. Oliver stopped like he'd hit a bulkhead. He followed Theo's finger to the woman with the focused eyes and steady posture. Ava's hand tightened on her bag strap. For a heartbeat, she looked at Oliver. Then her gaze snagged on Theo and flickered something unguarded, breaking the surface. "He's delirious," Oliver said, trying to make it sound practical. "It's just the fever talking." But Theo wasn't looking at her face. He was looking at the silver pendant shining at her throat, a tiny lighthouse etched with a 5-pointed star at the crown. "My lighthouse," Theo whispered more to himself than anyone. "Like in my drawings." Ava's fingers went to the pendant. She took a breath, stepped closer, careful not to cross a line. "I know a pediatrician on call," she offered. "If you need someone to—" "We're fine," Oliver said too quickly, turning toward the triage nurse. Names were called. Doors slid. Winter kept on breathing against the glass. Inside an exam room, the pediatrician checked Theo. Mild concussion, ruled out fever, likely viral observation overnight. Oliver exhaled. Theo sagged into the pillow palm, fisting the sheet. Eyes still drifting to the doorway, like he was waiting for someone to come back. In the hall, Ava leaned against a white wall and watched snow spool from a black sky. There was a paper crane in her coat pocket, blue so small it could ride a thumbnail. She'd been folding them since she was 17, ever since a different hospital, a different night, when she needed to keep her hands busy so her heart wouldn't break. She wasn't supposed to linger tonight. She was here to finalize a grant for the children's lab, the place where kids soldered LEDs and taught little motors to dance. But "That's my mom" kept echoing like a buoy bell. Later, when Theo was moved upstairs for observation, Ava drifted toward the elevator with a perfectly reasonable plan swing by the supply room and drop a box of solar robot kits for the ward. Reasonable plans sometimes look nothing like the truth. Through the glass door of Theo's room, she saw the boy propped on pillows and Oliver beside him, folding badly at a wrinkled square of yellow paper. The result looked more duck than crane. Theo giggled. The fever had loosened its grip just enough for joy to squeeze in. "Not bad," Ava said softly from the doorway. Oliver glanced over, caught mid-grimace, and let out a small self-deprecating laugh. "First attempt. It may never migrate." "Ducks can fly if someone believes in them," Ava said, then winced at her own corny courage. "I, brought some STEM kits, if Theo's up for it." Theo perked up immediately. "Robots," Ava nodded. "Please," he said, turning to Oliver with the gravest 5-year-old face. "We need a robot to stand by the lighthouse." Oliver's eyes flicked to Ava's pendant. He'd bought Theo a picture book of East Coast lighthouses after the boy started saying his late mother was a light on the water. Theo always drew the same star over the lantern room, a 5-pointed mark Oliver had never taught him. "You're with North Star Labs," Oliver said, reading her badge. "A kind of lighthouse." Ava's smile was quick and surprised. "We try." She stepped into the room and set a tiny blue crane beside Oliver's crumpled yellow bird. For tonight, she said, to mark the moment. Somewhere between snow and fluorescent light, something small began. That night, Ava returned late to her loft in the Lower East Side. From her kitchen window, the rooftops wore white caps. The chimneys exhaled faint steam like sighs. On the counter sat a wooden box tied with a ribbon, the color of midnight. Inside, dozens of paper cranes in every shade of sky and a smaller stack of unsent letters. Beneath those, a photo of a 17-year-old girl in a grocery store apron, looking straight into the lens as if she could bend the future with her stare. Back then, her full name was Ava Rose Callahan, daughter of a mechanic and a line cook. She'd been accepted into a selective technology program bound for engineering school until her father collapsed from a stroke in his workshop. Insurance covered almost nothing. At 17, Ava had signed a charitable support agreement with an organization that paid a fraction of the hospital bill in exchange for rights to anything she invented or discovered for years to come. She'd called it the night I lost my voice because after that, whenever she wanted to speak up, something invisible seemed to tighten around her throat. Years later, North Star Labs had found her. They'd offered her a place, a mission-run educational programs bring STEM to kids who couldn't afford private schools, build labs in pediatric wards. She'd learned to speak again. She'd learned to be the keeper of a light, someone who hangs small lanterns in dark corners. But she'd never learned to stop thinking about the children lying alone under hospital fluorescents, or the fathers like Oliver, whose shoulders carried too much. She opened her laptop to the account she used for anonymous donations, Lighthouse. A few keystrokes and Theo's hospital charges were covered. In the memo field she typed, "I'm glad you're safe," then deleted it. She almost added, "from the keeper of the light," but erased that too. Anonymity was the armor she'd worn for years, shielding her from questions she didn't want to answer. Still, "That's my mom," pulsed in her mind like a light through fog. She touched the silver lighthouse pendant, a keepsake from her mother, who had left when Ava was a child. The chain was cool against her skin. "Don't use your name. Don't cross the boundary. Just keep the light on." The next morning, Theo's fever was lower. Ava brought up a small box of robot kits, cheap plastic arms, with little servo motors and batteries. They spread the pieces out on a rolling table. Oliver squinted at the instructions while Theo tried fitting mismatched parts together. Ava guided them patiently, letting Theo lead, letting Oliver help. "What do you do exactly?" Oliver asked when Theo paused to drink apple juice. "Director of Educational Programs," Ava said. "I used to design theatrical lighting, then shifted into smart lighting systems. Eventually, I realized I was happiest teaching kids to make their own light." "What about you, Coast Guard?" once Oliver replied. "Now I run night deliveries. On my off hours, I fix stuff for neighbors in exchange for babysitting." Theo's mom, June, died giving birth. Ava glanced at Theo, who was busy clicking two plastic pieces together. Her chest tightened. What was she like? Theo thought for a moment, then touched his chest. "Dad says she was a light on the water. I have my own lighthouse right here." He patted where his heart beat beneath flannel pajamas. Ava's gaze dropped to her pendant again. June, a name soft as summer wind. Uncannily close to the pen name Lighthouse she'd used for donations, always signed with a small 5-pointed star. No one knew, no one needed to. "Thanks for the kit," Oliver said, as a nurse came in to say they'd be discharged that afternoon. "We're not used to taking gifts, but today's an exception." "It's not a gift," Ava said with a smile. "It's a science experience." Oliver chuckled. "Fair enough." When they parted at the elevator, Theo held up the blue crane Ava had given him. "Bye, Miss Lighthouse." The chain at Ava's neck felt suddenly heavier. "Bye, Captain," she said. Oliver's third-floor walk-up on 10th Street had a stairwell that groaned with every step. He carried Theo up the boy half asleep on his shoulder, winter air still clinging to their coats. The metal mailbox outside his door held a plain white envelope, no return address. Inside was the hospital bill stamped paid in full with a small slip of paper clipped to it. The light still stands even when we turn our backs. L. Oliver stood for a long moment in the hallway. Over the years, help had appeared like this from time to time. A prepaid heating bill one winter, a box of groceries before Christmas, always signed with a single letter L. It could stand for Lighthouse or just lost. He had never gone looking. If a light wanted to stay unseen, he'd let it be. But last night, there'd been a woman with a lighthouse at her throat, dark eyes that didn't look away, and a 5-year-old calling her mom. He folded the bill and the note carefully and slid them into a tin box where he kept things he couldn't name. Then he took the slip of paper, creased it twice, and idly folded it into the beginnings of a crane, clumsy, but enough to feel like a thank you. 2 weeks later, the blizzard had blown itself out. North Star Labs was hosting an exhibition called Lights from Our Hands, projects made by children from various hospital programs. St. Victor's pediatric ward was bringing a handful of kids. Theo was among them. Oliver wasn't comfortable around formal events and well-dressed crowds, but Theo insisted. That's where Miss Lighthouse lives. Ava was busy greeting guests and adjusting LED strands around a display table. She wore a plain white blouse, black slacks, the silver lighthouse hidden under the collar. Don't use your name. Don't break the rule, she reminded herself, though her heart thudded when she spotted Oliver and Theo at the door. Theo ran to her. Miss Lighthouse, I made a robot to go around the lighthouse, show me, Ava said, kneeling to his level. The lighthouse was a paper tube tower wrapped in foil, topped with a blinking LED. Below it, a toy robot trundled in circles, powered by a salvaged motor and button batteries. It was crude and perfect. Oliver hung back, watching how Ava listened to Theo, how she let him place wires wrong, before gently asking, "What happens if we try it the other way?" Her patience wasn't passive. It was disciplined, the kind born of standing alone too long and deciding never to let anyone else stand alone when she could help it. The opening speech began. The North Star director thanked the anonymous benefactor known as Lighthouse, who had supported Lights from Our Hands for 5 years. The room applauded as a graying man accepted a bouquet on the donor's behalf. From backstage, Ava watched in shadow, breathing slowly. Then, descending a back stair, she ran into Preston Hale, a man with rimless gold glasses and a smile like a knife. He was the executive from the charity that had locked her into that exploitative contract at 17, now serving as a consultant to one of North Star's partner foundations. His cologne was the same, and it hit her stomach like ice water. "Rose," he said, using the middle name she hated a hook in the ribs. "We meet again. Don't forget the non-disclosure clause, darling. You're here because we invested in you that night." Ava straightened. "You have no hold on me," she said quietly, "and I have a lawyer." He shrugged. "We have an entire building of them. Just a friendly reminder. Oh, and I hear you enjoy playing Lighthouse. Lights are pretty, but be careful not to shine them where they don't belong." She walked past him, feeling that old, invisible rope at her throat. In her pocket, her fingers found the blue paper crane she always carried. Inhale. Exhale. Hold the light steady. Back on the floor, Theo was staring at a framed photograph of the Montauk Lighthouse, its crown topped with a 5-pointed star. "I know this star," he whispered without looking at her. "I draw it all the time." "Why do you draw it?" Ava asked. Theo pressed a hand to his chest, the way he always did. "Because every time I'm scared, I hear someone in my head say, 'Turn the light on, Captain.' and then I draw. I've never told anyone. I'm scared it'll stop if I say it out loud. Did your dad teach you that? Ava asked softly. Theo shook his head. It's just there. Like someone on a tower telling me not to be afraid. Oliver came over, resting a hand on his son's shoulder. Every captain has a keeper, he said. You've got two, me and someone you haven't met yet. He glanced at Ava for just a second. Maybe more if she counts. From across the room, Ava saw Preston in quiet conversation with the North Star director. She knew she'd have to choose keep hiding behind her anonymous donations or step out into the light and finally tell the story of the night she lost her voice. That night, Ava stayed long after the exhibition hall emptied. She coiled LED strings into neat loops, wiped down folding tables, and packed leftover cookies into wax paper bags for the pediatric ward. Outside, the street was wet from melting snow, neon reflected in puddles. Oliver appeared in the doorway, Theo asleep in his arms. He wouldn't leave without saying goodbye, Oliver said, but he lost the battle with gravity. Ava smiled. Then I'll say it for him. Goodbye, Captain. She reached out and brushed a stray curl from Theo's forehead. And thank you for building the lighthouse. Oliver hesitated. About that. The bills. The note. Her smile faltered, but she didn't deny it. Sometimes the only way I can do something is by not attaching my name. Why me? Why him? His voice was gentle but edged with confusion. Ava looked down at her hands. When I was 17, my dad got sick. We lost almost everything. Someone helped us anonymously. I never knew who, but I decided that if I could be that person for someone else, I would. Your son, he reminds me of someone I once promised to protect and couldn't. Oliver shifted his weight. I'm grateful, but Theo doesn't need another ghost in his life. If you're going to be here, be here. The words landed like a soft but solid anchor. Ava almost said, I can't, almost told him about Preston, the contract, the risks. But instead, she said, I'll try. 2 days later, Oliver was making a late-night delivery when a black SUV ran a red light. The impact spun his van halfway into a lamppost. He came to in a haze of metal and glass, hearing a paramedic's voice. Possible rib fractures, get him stabilized. Theo was at a neighbor's, asleep. At the hospital, Ava arrived still wearing her North Star jacket, hair damp from a fast shower shoes untied. She found Oliver in a curtained bay, pale but conscious, an oxygen cannula in his nose. You shouldn't be here, he murmured. Neither should you, she replied. They'll keep me overnight, he said. Theo, I've got him, she said. And before you protest, remember you told me to be here. I'm cashing in that invitation. He managed a faint smile. Bossy. Persistent, she corrected. At Oliver's apartment, Theo blinked awake to find Ava in the kitchen heating milk. Where's Dad? He asked, voice tight. He got a little banged up, so the doctors are fixing him, Ava said. He'll be okay. You and I are on Lighthouse duty tonight. Theo tilted his head. What's that? It means we keep the light on so he can find his way home, she said, tapping the small desk lamp by the window. See, already working. Theo grinned sleepily. Miss Lighthouse, I think you're part of our crew now. She felt the invisible rope at her throat loosen just a little. The next morning, Ava brought Theo to visit Oliver. They found him sitting up, hospital gown slightly crooked, telling a nurse about a robot lighthouse that could signal distress codes. Theo climbed onto the bed, holding a folded blue paper crane. For you, Dad. Miss Lighthouse says ducks can fly if someone believes in them. Oliver looked at Ava, something unreadable in his eyes. "Do you?" She nodded. "I do." In that moment, she knew the rule she'd lived by, don't attach your name, wasn't keeping her safe anymore. It was keeping her alone. 2 weeks later, St. Victor's hosted its quarterly family science night. The pediatric ward turned its lounge into a miniature fair tables lined with blinking circuits, paper rockets, tiny robots rolling across the floor. Ava was moving between stations when she spotted Preston Hale again, this time leaning on the coffee counter, chatting with one of North Star's board members. She felt the old panic crawl up her spine. But this time she didn't retreat to the shadows. "Preston," she said, approaching with the steady gait of someone who had decided exactly what she'd do. "You told me once you invested in me. What you actually did was corner a desperate teenager and take her work for pennies. I don't owe you my silence anymore." His smile faltered. Careful, Rose. "My name," she said, voice clear, "is Ava Callahan. And if you threaten me or the kids in my programs, I'll make sure every local news outlet knows how your so-called charity operates." Preston's jaw tightened. "You think anyone will care? People forget. Not if you leave a light on," she said, stepping back. "And I've been leaving them everywhere." That night after the fair ended, Ava found Oliver and Theo still at their table tweaking the robot Lighthouse. "I quit hiding today," she told them quietly. Oliver leaned forward. "From what?" She sat down and told them the whole story, the hospital bill when she was 17, the predatory contract, the years of anonymity, the donations signed only with an L. She told them how every time she thought of stopping, she remembered lying awake in a hospital bed, herself wishing someone would turn on a light. Theo listened with wide eyes, fingers tracing the grooves on the lighthouse pendant. "So you were my lighthouse for real?" Ava's throat tightened. "Yes, Captain. Every bill paid, every kit, every crane. All me." Oliver was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I told you before, if you're going to be here, be here. This counts." The next afternoon, Oliver was discharged. Theo insisted they stop at the harbor before going home. The Montauk Lighthouse rose in the distance, its lantern room catching the winter sun. Theo stood between them, one mittened hand in each of theirs. "Turn the light on, Captain," he said softly. Ava felt the words settle inside her like a key turning in a lock. Later that week at her loft, Ava opened the wooden box of cranes. For the first time in years, she wrote her name in full on a note, no initials, no secrecy, before folding it into the 100th blue crane. She carried it to Oliver's apartment, left it on the windowsill where the desk lamp always glowed. Inside the folded wings, the note read, "Some lights belong to everyone, but you and Theo, you're my home port. Ava." When Oliver found it, he didn't call her or text. He simply put the crane on the shelf beside the wrinkled yellow one they'd made together the night they met. And from then on, no one in that little crew had to sail alone.